In an April 10th hearing in front of the Senate Armed Services Committee, Admiral Paparo spoke about the need for the US to maintain, quote, the high ground. He said, if you do not hold the high ground along the First Island chain, you are vastly limited in your ability to operate. So ceding air superiority is not an option if we intend to maintain capability against our adversaries and the ability to support our allies. Professor Zuo, give us a perspective then on why it's so important to maintain the First Island chain for the US.
First of all, freedom of navigation. I think that's the very core principle of the modern international maritime law. And the United States definitely want to keep the freedom of navigation for its own ships and for all ships going through this area. I think that's the first reason.
And why, in terms of a Taiwan crisis, is this line so important?
There's another scenario we have to take into account. If the Taiwan contingence does happen, then there is a need for Philippines and Japan to evacuate their nationals living in Taiwan. And for that purpose, the Philippines and Japan need to make sure that their vessels can still go through this channel, the channels around Taiwan, and to go to Taiwan and to take their nationals back home. And because of that purpose, to keep the First Island chain out of the war, to keep the First Island chain able to accommodate those ships is very important for not only United States but also U.S. allies such as Philippines and Japan.
Recently, Renato, the US agreed to send 20, I think, F-16s to the Philippines. This is obviously a big deal. Can you help us to piece together some of the other pieces of this jigsaw that enable the US to achieve this air superiority or to achieve this high ground on the First Island chain? For example, Japan for the first time will participate in Balikatan, and also the Prime Minister will visit Philippines, I believe, this week.
Well, of course, again, going back to the notion of the First Island chain, the weakest link in the First Island chain is no less in the Philippines. And it's because of the state of the armed forces of the Philippines. For the last 75 years, the armed forces of the Philippines had focused primarily on internal. So, of course, the naval and air capabilities are, of course, not on par on what Taiwan or Japan or other even ASEAN countries have. So this is an effort on the part of the United States to at least put some efforts to ensure that the weakest link in the First Island chain is, of course, strengthened. But at least at this point in time, 20 F-16, which will be, of course, a dramatic change in terms of the capability of the Philippine Air Force.
Absolutely. And Japan, of course, has F-35s. Now, according to the Philippine military, 5 underwater drones were found in Philippine waters between 2022 and 2024. These devices with Chinese markings were capable of gathering information that could aid in, quote, underwater warfare, the country's military said. At least one had relayed a signal to China. Watch this.
They have the capability to receive, to process, to store, and to transmit data through satellite communications to a station on land, to a mothership, or to other drones.
3 of the drones were found off the north coast of the Philippines' main island of Luzon, including 2 near the Balintang Channel south of Taiwan. 2 others were retrieved from, quote, critical choke points near Masbate Island in the central Philippines and the southern island of Mindanao. Professor Zuo, let me ask you, what is the strategic significance of these particular waters?
Okay, of course, these waters are located in a very in places of strategic importance. Whether it's close to the Bass Channel, the key channel for Taiwan's safety, and also those channels are close to the South China Sea. I think that's the first point we need to be aware of. And secondly, because of the confrontation between PLA and Philippines Navy ships, so these places are potential flashing points between these 2 armies. And so that's why collecting information about these waters becomes critically important, not only for Philippines, but also for China.
Again, Renato, give us some specific scenarios. I mean, what sort of intelligence are they gathering? Do they want to monitor? Do they want to control these waterways?
No, primarily, I think, as mentioned by Admiral Roy Trinidad, is primarily for submarine warfare. And they were found in the central part of the Philippines, the Visayas Island, where, of course, you have two very important choke points to the Pacific. Number one is the San Bernardino Straits, separating, of course, Luzon from, I think, Samar. Then further south, of course, you have the Surigao Straits. Those were areas where you have major naval battles during the Second World War, during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. So those are access points from the South China Sea. You go to the archipelagic internal waters of the Philippines. Then voila, you go, of course, to the Pacific. That's where, of course, China's submarines could basically interdict reinforcement coming from Guam or Hawaii, going either to Luzon or going, of course, to Taiwan. So that's important there. They're looking at waters surrounding two very important choke points in the central Philippines, San Bernardino Strait and, of course, Surigao Strait.
Right. And so is this so that the Chinese submarines, which we assume will be stationed in the South China Sea, at those militarized outposts that they have built, can also, as you said, move across to the Pacific?
Inside the internal waters of the Philippine archipelago.
So in terms of that, does that mean that, in effect, this is all China's efforts, Professor Zuo, for China to try to break through the first island chain?
Of course, China wants to expand its military reach in the Pacific Ocean to break through first island chain, to break through second island chain. However, we need to know that these drones are discovered throughout the last several years. And what does that mean? That means that the PLA has conducted a series of investigation and preparation for its military maneuver in this region for quite a long time.
Now, in mid-April, Google Maps was found to have labeled parts of the South China Sea near the Philippine coast as the West Philippine Sea. Google has since clarified that the term was always visible. The update has simply made it more visible at lower magnifications of the map. Renato, let me come to you. President Marcos Jr. was over the moon, of course, at the development and described it as growing acceptance of Manila's claim essentially over its own EEZ, exclusive economic zone, in the face of Chinese threats. What do you make of the change?
Google is a private company, so I won't give too much importance to us. It's more in terms of publicity. Whether that publicity would last for a long time, of course, is another matter. So I don't think Google represents the voice of the international community. Well and good, it's being popularized, but whether it would stick out there and, of course, have greater geopolitical implication, of course, is another matter.
Professor Zuo, Chinese embassy in Philippines has lodged a formal protest. I guess that's to Google. We can wait to see if this achieves any change. But why would such a small change worry Beijing?
I think that's typical Beijing behavior. I'm not surprised at all. But we also need to understand that the fact that Google put West Philippine Sea on its map reflect the fact that that term has been raised several times or many times, so that Google put it on its map. Yeah, of course, in international systems, naming of the sea or naming of the island needs a mutual consultation. So, and the private company does not follow that rule. But the fact that more and more people use that term could lead to some mutual consultation in international organization.
Absolutely. And Renato, should Google adopt the other EEZs of other countries around the South China Sea or around the 9-10 line, what next?
I don't know. It's a private company. It has its own motives, probably.
Okay, let me rephrase it. Let me rephrase it.
That's good.
What will China do? What will Beijing?
Well, again, China would react the same way as I remember. Of course, remember the movie about Barbie, where Vietnam protested over the fact that you have supposed to be a 9-9, even the Philippines. So those are petty issues, primarily addressed to the popular media, but nevertheless, they're triggered geopolitical nerves of countries.